Welcome to AP Environmental Science. In this video, we are briefly going to discuss the main categories of pollution. Now, there are two categories here, and they are point source and non-point source. And this image here gives a good overview of the difference and some examples between point source and non-point source. Point source pollution originates from a single identifiable source, so you can point directly to where that pollution is coming from. Think of a single discharge pipe or a smokestack where you can point at it and you know exactly where that pollution is coming from. So some examples would include wastewater treatment plants, manufacturing facilities, oil refineries, CAFOs, so the concentrated animal feeding operations, and leaky underground storage tanks. For all of these examples, we can point directly to the source of that pollution. The other type would be non-point source pollution. Non-point source pollution typically originates from a large land area, and it's pretty difficult to identify the specific or exact source of that pollution. So remember, if you cannot identify a single point that the pollution's coming from, that means it must be a non-point source pollution. Oftentimes, this pollution is coming from several sources over a wide area, and it accumulates into that water body. Some examples include chemical fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides that are sprayed over agricultural or residential land areas. Oftentimes, it's such a large land area that you cannot pinpoint exactly where it is coming from. Surface water runoff from urban areas often picks up those oils and greases and chemicals that were dripping out of vehicles and carries it down into storm drains and out into the waterways, or just across the surface of a parking lot and into a waterway. Sediment also enters waterways from eroding away stream banks and runoff from construction sites and runoff from tilled cropland. An interesting bit of information is that sediment is one of the most significant or largest sources of non-point pollution in the United States. In this image on this slide, we can see a river that is full of sediment pollution pouring into a river that does not have an issue with sediment pollution, and you can see the color differences between the two. Now, there are ways that we can control this pollution. The Clean Water Act really focuses in on point source pollution. And if an entity is discharging a point source of pollution, they have to obtain permits and they have to meet acceptable thresholds before they can begin discharging. Also, that effluent or the liquid that is leaving from that point has to go through some level of treatment before it is discharged. Non-point source pollution is much more difficult to regulate and control. It is not regulated through a permitting process. Instead, it is managed through partnerships between landowners, businesses, and governments. Now, in summary, you should be able to describe and provide some examples of point source pollution and non-point source pollution, and you should be able to briefly explain some of the differences in how they are controlled. Please leave me your questions here at the end, and I hope that as you watch this video, you were able to learn something.